You are safe with us. Hell's angels risk their lives to save a little angel. The late afternoon sun painted the sky in shades of gold and amber as Ray Callahan led his brothers down the empty rural highway. His Harley rumbled beneath him, a comforting vibration he'd known for more than 20 years. The wind whipped against his leather vest, making the patches and emblems ripple. Behind him rode 4 other men, his family by choice, not blood. Ray breathed deeply, filling his lungs with the crisp country air. These quiet rides were what he lived for. No trouble, no complications, just the road stretching out before them like a promise. "Beautiful evening," Mac called out, pulling his bike alongside Ray's. At 53, Mac was the oldest of the group, his beard more salt than pepper these days. Ray nodded, squinting at the golden sunset. "Best kind." The highway curved gently through rolling farmland. Fields of corn swayed in the breeze on one side, while the other gave way to stretches of pasture where cattle grazed lazily. The evening light made everything look softer somehow. "Hey, Iron Horse," Bear shouted from behind, using Ray's road name. At 6'5", with shoulders like a linebacker, Bear was the giant of their group. "Think we'll make it to Millerton before dark?" Before you continue listening, please let me know where in the world are you watching from today. Now back to the story. Ray checked his watch and shook his head. "Not unless we gun it. Why?" "Just wondering. My stomach's talking to me." Bear patted his belly and laughed. "When isn't it?" Mac shot back with a grin. The 5 men rode in easy formation, their bikes a staggered line of chrome and steel. They'd been together so long they barely needed words anymore. A nod, a hand signal, a slight change in position. That was all it took to communicate on the road. "You've been quiet today, Ray," said Vince, the youngest at 38. "More than usual, I mean." Ray shrugged. "Just thinking." "Dangerous habit," joked Tanner, pulling up on Ray's other side. His weathered face cracked into a smile beneath his bandana. The truth was, Ray had been thinking about change, about time passing. 25 years with the Brotherhood, and sometimes he wondered what marks he'd left on the world. Good ones, he hoped. But some days he wasn't sure. "Anybody check the weather?" Ray asked, noticing clouds gathering to the west. "Clear through tomorrow," Tanner answered. "That storm's heading the other direction." They rode in comfortable silence for a while, the only sounds the rumble of engines and the whistle of wind. This stretch of highway was gloriously empty. No traffic lights, no congestion, just pure freedom. "Remember that run to Sturgis 3 summers ago?" Bear called out suddenly, laughter in his voice. Mac groaned. "You mean when Tanner's bike broke down in that town with 1 stoplight and no garage?" "And that old lady put us all up in her boarding house," Tanner added. "Made us take our boots off at the door," Vince said, chuckling. "And fed us like we were her grandkids," Ray finished, a rare smile crossing his face. "Best apple pie I ever had." The memory hung between them, warm and easy. That was how it always was. Hard men with soft spots, finding kindness in unexpected places, and returning it when they could. Ray eased up on the throttle as they rounded another bend. The highway stretched ahead, bathed in fading golden light. The sun was sinking faster now, the horizon a brilliant orange streak. "Hold up," Ray said, pointing ahead. "That look like a diner to you?" About a quarter-mile ahead, a small roadside building glowed with light. A neon open sign flickered in the window, and a few cars dotted the gravel lot. "Coffee sounds good right about now," Mac said, patting his tank. "And pie," Bear added hopefully. Ray nodded, slowing his bike. "Let's take a break then." One by one, they turned into the gravel parking lot of the diner. The place looked like it had been there since the 60s. a long, narrow building with large windows and a rusted tin roof. The sign above the door read, "Maggie's Roadside Diner," in faded red letters. They parked their bikes in a neat row, cutting the engines in sequence until the sudden quiet felt loud in their ears. Ray removed his helmet and ran a hand through his graying hair, looking at the warm glow coming from inside the diner. "Just coffee for me," Ray said as they dismounted. "Got a feeling we should get back on the road before full dark." "Always the responsible one," Tanner teased, clapping Ray on the shoulder. Ray didn't respond. Something in the air felt different, but he couldn't put his finger on what. Just an old rider's instinct, probably. He shrugged it off and followed his brothers toward the diner's entrance, boots crunching on gravel in the gathering dusk. The bell above the diner door jingled as Ray pushed it open. Warm air scented with coffee and fried food rushed out to meet them. Inside, Maggie's Roadside Diner looked exactly as Ray had expected. Red vinyl booths, a long counter with rotating stools, and walls decorated with faded local photographs and vintage advertisements. The diner wasn't crowded, just a few tables occupied by locals, who all turned to stare as the 5 leather-clad men entered. The conversation dimmed immediately, replaced by wary silence. Ray was used to this reaction. He led his brothers to a corner booth without acknowledging the stares. A middle-aged waitress approached, coffee pot in hand, her smile professional but tight around the edges. "Evening, gentlemen," she said, flipping over the white mugs that sat waiting on the table. "Just passing through?" "Yes, ma'am," Ray answered politely. "Just stopped for coffee." She nodded and poured 5 steaming cups. "Anything to eat with that?" Bear's face lit up. "You got pie?" "Apple, cherry, and lemon meringue," she replied, relaxing slightly at Bear's eager expression. "Cherry for me," Bear said. "Make it 2, Vince added. The waitress, her name tag read Doris, jotted down their orders. "Be right back with those pies." As she walked away, Ray noticed the other customers still watching them. An elderly couple at the counter quickly looked down at their plates. A trucker in the opposite corner narrowed his eyes over his coffee mug. 3 men in flannel shirts at a center table whispered to each other, occasionally glancing over. "Friendly place," Mac muttered, stirring sugar into his coffee. Tanner shrugged. "Same old story." Ray took a sip of his coffee, strong and hot, just how he liked it. "Leave 'em be. Not everyone understands the life." The booth was a tight fit for 5 large men, their shoulders bumped as they settled in, leather vests creaking. Outside the window, darkness was falling faster now, turning the glass into a mirror that reflected their faces back at them. "So, Bear," Vince said, breaking the silence, "you ever gonna tell us what happened with that woman in Tucson?" Bear's booming laugh filled the diner. "That story ain't fit for public telling." "Which means it's good," Mac chuckled. "Let's just say," Bear lowered his voice to a stage whisper, "she wasn't expecting me to know how to tango." The men erupted in laughter. Ray couldn't help the smile that cracked his serious expression. These moments, simple, honest laughter among brothers, were worth all the suspicious stares in the world. Doris returned with 2 slices of cherry pie, setting them in front of Bear and Vince. "Anything else I can get you, boys?" she asked, her initial wariness giving way to professional friendliness. "This is perfect, thank you," Ray replied. As she walked away, Bear dug into his pie with enthusiasm. "Man, that's good," he said around a mouthful of cherries. "Ray, you sure you don't want some?" Ray shook his head. "Coffee's enough for me." The diner's radio played old country music softly in the background. Johnny Cash singing about walking the line. Ray tapped his fingers on the table in rhythm, watching the locals continue their meals while trying to pretend they weren't watching the bikers. "You remember that diner in Montana?" Tanner said suddenly. "The one with the waitress who had that tattoo sleeve?" The one who ended up riding with the Missoula chapter for a while? Mac asked. Tanner nodded. Katie. Wonder whatever happened to her. Heard she opened her own place out west, Vince said. Good for her, Ray commented. She had grit. They continued talking, swapping stories from the road. Their voices blended with the clatter of dishes and the hum of the diner's ancient refrigerator. Outside, the last traces of sunlight disappeared, leaving only darkness and the occasional sweep of headlights from passing cars. Vince was in the middle of describing a mechanical issue with his bike when Ray noticed him stop mid-sentence. Vince's eyes fixed on something through the window, his expression changing. What is it? Ray asked, turning to follow his gaze. Vince pointed. That smoke? In the distance, beyond the fields across the highway, a thin column of dark smoke rose against the night sky. It was faint, but definitely there, illuminated briefly by what might have been flames at its base. That ain't a bonfire, Bear said, all humor gone from his voice. The laughter died instantly. 5 pairs of eyes locked on the distant smoke, which seemed to be growing thicker even as they watched. How far you think? Tanner asked quietly. Couple miles, maybe less, Ray answered, already reaching for his wallet to pay for their coffee and pie. The easy mood of moments before vanished completely, replaced by a familiar tension, the Brotherhood sensing trouble and preparing to move. Ray tossed a $20 bill on the table. Keep the change, he told Doris, as the 5 men stood in unison, their movements swift and coordinated. The locals watched in surprise as the intimidating group suddenly rushed for the exit. The cool night air hit Ray's face as he pushed through the diner door. The smoke was clearer now, a dark column rising against the star-filled sky. Without a word, the Brotherhood moved toward their bikes, parked in a neat row beside the diner. That's somebody's home burning, Max said, his voice grim as he swung his leg over his Harley. Ray nodded, already pulling on his helmet. Could be nothing. Could be something bad. Only one way to find out, Tanner replied, kick-starting his bike. The engines roared to life, one after another, cutting through the quiet countryside night. Ray led the formation, pulling onto the empty highway with the others falling in behind him. He twisted the throttle, and the bike responded instantly, shooting forward into the darkness. The wind rushed past as they accelerated, the smoke growing larger in the distance. Ray's mind raced faster than his motorcycle. Fire in these rural areas could be devastating. Far from town, far from help, far. The headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating the narrow country road. Ray leaned into a curve, feeling the pull of gravity as the others followed his lead. They rode in tight formation, a unit moving with singular purpose. In his rearview mirror, Ray saw Bear point ahead. The glow of flames was visible now, flickering orange against the night sky. Ray nodded and pushed his bike even faster. The road narrowed as they turned onto a gravel side road, dust kicking up behind their wheels. The smoke was thicker here, and Ray could smell it, wood burning, plastic melting. His stomach tightened. Not good, he muttered to himself inside his helmet. Not good at all. They rounded a final bend, and suddenly the burning farmhouse came into full view. The 2-story white house was already half consumed by flames. Fire poured from the upstairs windows, licking up the siding and reaching towards the roof. Thick black smoke billowed upward. Ray skidded to a stop in the gravel driveway, the others pulling up beside him. 3 neighbors stood in the yard, one with a garden hose that was pathetically inadequate against the inferno. A woman was on her knees in the grass, screaming into a phone. "I told you, Miller Road! Please hurry!" she cried, her voice breaking with panic. Ray ripped off his helmet and rushed towards the scene. Heat blasted his face as he approached the burning structure. "What happened?" he shouted to a man who was coughing, his face streaked with soot. It just went up so fast, the man choked out. 1 minute nothing. Next thing flames everywhere. Tanner and the others joined Ray, forming a line between the fire and the small group of neighbors. Is everyone out? Bear asked, his massive frame tense. The woman on the phone looked up, her face contorted with terror. Lily! She screamed. Megan's little girl is still inside. Ray felt the blood drain from his face. Where? He demanded, stepping closer to the woman. Upstairs bedroom, she sobbed, pointing to the second floor where flames now engulfed the entire west side. Back of the house, she's only 8. Without hesitation, Ray turned toward the burning farmhouse. The heat was incredible, even from 20 feet away, the roar of the flames drowning out almost everything else. Ray! Vince shouted, grabbing his arm. Fire department's coming. When? Ray demanded, already knowing the answer from the woman's desperate phone call. Too late, Mac said quietly, staring at the rapidly deteriorating structure. A terrible crash sounded as part of the porch roof collapsed. Sparks and burning debris shot outward, forcing everyone to step back. No one would expect you to go in there, the soot-covered man said, seeing Ray's expression. Ray's eyes met those of his brothers. No words were necessary. They had ridden together too long. They understood what was coming next. Which window? Ray asked, shrugging out of his leather vest and handing it to Tanner. Second floor, east side, the woman sobbed. The room with the little balcony. Ray spotted it. A small, decorative balcony outside a window that wasn't yet fully engulfed, though smoke poured out around the frame. Jesus, Ray, Bear whispered. That's suicide. Not today it isn't, Ray answered, his voice hard with determination. He turned to his brothers. I'm going in. If I find her, I'll need you at that side door. Before anyone could argue further, a woman's scream cut through the night. My baby! My baby's in there! A young woman came running up the driveway, her face a mask of pure terror as she tried to rush toward the burning house. Mac and Bear caught her before she could get too close to the flames. Someone help her! She screamed, fighting against their grip. Please, she's in there! Lily! Ray looked at the inferno, then at the desperate mother, and made his decision. Without another word, he sprinted toward the burning farmhouse. Heat slammed into Ray like a physical wall as he approached the burning house. The front entrance was completely engulfed, orange flames dancing wickedly across what remained of the porch. Thick black smoke poured from every opening. He dropped low, pulling his t-shirt up over his nose and mouth. Around back, he shouted to his brothers over the roar of the fire. Ray darted along the side of the house, feeling the scorching heat radiating through the siding. The grass beneath his boots was dry and brittle, small embers already catching in patches. He squinted through the smoke, searching for any point of entry. A window on the ground floor had shattered from the heat, but flames poured out like angry tongues. Not that way. Ray continued around to the back of the farmhouse, where the fire seemed slightly less intense. A back door stood partially open, smoke billowing outward. East side, upstairs, Ray muttered to himself, mapping the house in his mind. He took a deep breath, knowing what came next. He plunged inside. Instantly, the world became a roaring, crackling hell. Smoke swirled around him, thick and choking. The heat pressed against him from all sides. Ray dropped to his hands and knees where the air was marginally clearer, though still toxic. Lily, he shouted, his voice barely audible over the hungry growl of the fire. Lily! Through the smoke, Ray could make out what seemed to be a kitchen. The countertops were starting to catch fire, and the wallpaper peeled and curled as flames licked up the walls. He crawled forward, keeping his face as low as possible. A doorway ahead revealed what looked like a living room. Beyond that, Ray could see the base of a staircase. That was his target. Ray moved faster, ignoring the burning sensation in his lungs. The floor beneath him was hot enough to feel through his jeans. Something crashed behind him, part of the ceiling giving way. No time to hesitate. He reached the staircase and pulled himself upright, staying as low as he could while still being able to climb. The wooden steps creaked dangerously beneath his weight. Halfway up, Ray paused, listening. The entire house groaned and popped around him, the sound of wood and support beams starting to fail. "Lily," he called again, pushing through the wall of smoke at the top of the stairs. The upstairs hallway was barely visible. Ray oriented himself. East side would be to his right. He moved forward, pressing against the wall for guidance. The smoke was so thick he could barely see his hand in front of his face. A terrible cracking sound came from somewhere to his left. Ray didn't wait to see what it was. He surged forward, moving on instinct. The floor beneath his feet felt unstable, beginning to weaken from the fire below. "Lily, where are you?" Ray called, his voice hoarse. And then, miraculously, he heard it. A small, frightened cough. "Help!" The tiny voice came from behind a door at the end of the hall. Ray lunged forward, grabbing the doorknob, then jerking his hand back with a hiss. The metal was scorching hot. He pulled his t-shirt over his hand and tried again, twisting hard and shouldering the door open. Inside, the bedroom was filling with smoke, but the flames hadn't yet breached the walls. In the corner, huddled beneath a small desk, was a little girl. Her blonde hair was matted to her forehead, her face streaked with tears and soot. She was clutching a small, stuffed rabbit, coughing violently. "Lily?" Ray asked, dropping to his knees. The girl nodded, her eyes wide with fear. "I'm Ray. I'm going to get you out of here," he said, forcing his voice to sound calmer than he felt. Behind him, there was a crash as something major gave way in another part of the house. The floor beneath them shuddered. Ray glanced at the window. Flames were now visible outside it, crawling up the exterior wall. The small balcony the neighbor had mentioned was already starting to smoke. Lily coughed again, a deep, racking sound that shook her tiny frame. Her eyes darted fearfully to the bedroom door, where smoke poured in with increasing intensity. "Are you a firefighter?" she asked, her voice small and raspy. Ray shook his head. "No, sweetheart, but I'm going to help you." Another crash, closer this time. The bedroom wall nearest the hallway began to glow with heat. "I'm scared," Lily whispered, clutching her rabbit tighter. "I know," Ray said, reaching out his hand. "But you're not alone anymore, I promise." The little girl hesitated for just a moment, then grabbed his hand. Ray pulled her gently from beneath the desk and into his arms, feeling her tiny body trembling against him. The wall near the door suddenly erupted in flames. Ray shrugged out of his leather jacket in one fluid motion. The thick black leather was heavy, worn smooth from years on the road. Without hesitation, he wrapped it around Lily's small frame, cocooning her against what was coming next. "Hold on to me tight," he instructed, his voice gruff but steady. "Keep your face against my chest. Don't look up, no matter what." Lily nodded, her eyes huge with fear. She clutched her rabbit with one hand and grabbed Ray's shirt with the other, her tiny fingers curling into the fabric like anchors. Ray lifted her, cradling her against his chest. She weighed almost nothing in his arms. The wall beside them groaned, glowing orange with heat. Ray turned away, shielding Lily with his body as embers showered down from the ceiling. The door they had come through was now a rectangle of flames. "Gotta make a new exit," Ray muttered. He crossed to the window, peering through the smoke. The drop was too far for safety. The balcony outside was beginning to catch fire, but it might hold for a moment. Ray kicked at the window frame, smashing out the remaining glass with his boot. "Keep your eyes closed," he reminded Lily, feeling her bury her face deeper against his chest. Hot air rushed in from outside, feeding the hungry flames behind them. Ray ducked through the window onto the small balcony, the wooden boards creaking ominously beneath his weight. Parts of the railing were already burning. Across the yard, Ray could see his brothers shouting, pointing. They had found a ladder somewhere and were rushing towards the house with it, but there wasn't time to wait. The balcony floor shifted beneath him, beginning to pull away from the house. Ray glanced down, about 15 feet to the ground. Not ideal, but better than burning. "Hang on tight, little one," he whispered. He climbed over the failing railing, perching on the edge for just a second before jumping. He twisted mid-air, making sure his body would absorb the impact instead of Lily. They hit the ground hard. Pain shot through Ray's right ankle and up his leg. He rolled, keeping Lily safely tucked against him, away from the impact. For a moment they lay in the grass, Ray catching his breath as pain pulsed through his leg. "You okay, sweetheart?" he gasped. Lily nodded against his chest, still clinging to him. A tremendous crash sounded behind them as the balcony tore free from the house, bringing part of the wall with it. Burning debris rained down where they had been moments before. "Gotta keep moving," Ray grunted, pushing to his feet. His ankle screamed in protest, but he ignored it, keeping Lily held tight. The heat was still intense, even yards from the house. Ray limped away from the building, each step sending spikes of pain up his leg. Smoke swirled around them, making his eyes water and his lungs burn. Lily coughed against his chest, the sound small and frightening. "Almost there," Ray promised, though his own lungs felt like they were filled with broken glass. Through the smoke, he could make out figures rushing toward them, his brothers. The closest one was Bear, his massive form unmistakable even through the haze. "Got her," Ray called, his voice raw. "She's alive." Bear reached them first, followed by Dagger and the others. Their faces were streaked with soot, eyes wide with a mixture of fear and relief. "Jesus, Ray," Bear breathed. "Thought you were gone." Ray didn't answer. His ankle gave way suddenly, and he stumbled. Bear caught his shoulder, steadying him. Neighbors were gathering now, their voices a distant buzz over the roar of the fire. Ray could hear sirens in the distance, growing louder. Help was finally coming, but they'd been just in time. He looked down at the small bundle in his arms. Lily's face was dirty, streaked with tears that had cut clean tracks through the soot. She was trembling, but her eyes were open now, fixed on Ray's face. Ray sank down onto the grass, his injured leg no longer able to support him. He cradled Lily in his lap, finally loosening his grip enough to check her over. No obvious injuries beyond some minor burns and the effects of smoke. Her breathing was labored but steady. Around them, the chaos continued. The fire trucks pulled in, firefighters jumping out and unrolling hoses. Neighbors shouted information. Ray's brothers formed a protective circle around him and the child, keeping the growing crowd back. Lily looked up at Ray, her blue eyes wide and frightened. "Is my house gone?" she whispered. Ray nodded slowly. "I'm sorry, sweetheart." Her lower lip trembled, but she didn't cry. Instead, she just held her rabbit tighter. Ray shifted his jacket more securely around her shoulders. "You were so brave in there," he told her softly. A paramedic approached, but Ray waved them off for a moment. He needed to say something first. He leaned down, his voice just for Lily. "You're safe with us now, sweetheart." The paramedics approached with purpose, their faces set in professional concern. A woman with short brown hair knelt beside Ray and Lily, her uniform crisp despite the chaos around them. "We need to check her out," she said firmly but kindly. Smoke inhalation can be serious, especially for children. Ray nodded, understanding the logic. He tried to shift Lily toward the paramedic, but the girl's fingers only tightened in his shirt. "No," Lily whispered, her voice small but determined. Her face pressed harder against Ray's chest. "It's okay," Ray said, his voice gentler than his brothers had ever heard it. "These people are here to help you. They need to make sure you're all right." Lily shook her head, her whole body trembling. The paramedic reached for her, and Lily let out a sound halfway between a whimper and a cry. "Don't leave me," she pleaded, looking up at Ray with tear-filled eyes. "Please don't leave me." Ray's heart twisted in his chest. He looked at the paramedic, then at his brothers, who stood nearby watching with uncharacteristic concern on their weathered faces. "What if I stay with her?" Ray asked the paramedic. "While you check her out?" The woman hesitated, then nodded. "That could work, but we really should get her to the ambulance." Ray tried to stand, but his injured ankle gave way again. He winced, unable to hide the pain this time. "You're hurt too," the paramedic observed. "We need to check you both out." Bear stepped forward. "I'll carry her if that's okay with the little one." His voice, usually loud and booming, was surprisingly soft. Lily looked up at the mountain of a man with wide eyes, then back at Ray, clearly uncertain. "Bear's my brother," Ray explained to her. "Not my real brother, but as good as. He'll carry you, and I'll be right beside you the whole time. I promise." After a moment of consideration, Lily gave a tiny nod. Bear bent down, his massive hands surprisingly gentle as he lifted her. Ray's leather jacket still wrapped around her shoulders, making her look even smaller. Ray pushed himself up, grimacing as he put weight on his injured ankle. Dagger appeared at his side, offering a shoulder for support without a word. Together, they followed Bear toward the ambulance. The crowd had grown larger. Neighbors gathered in clumps, watching the firefighters battle the blaze. Ray noticed how they stared at the bikers, expressions ranging from confusion to suspicion to reluctant gratitude. At the ambulance, Bear carefully set Lily down on the edge of the open doors. The paramedics moved in, one checking her oxygen levels while another examined Ray's ankle. Through it all, Lily kept her eyes fixed on Ray, as if afraid he might vanish if she looked away. "Oxygen levels are a bit low," the paramedic said. "We need to get her on some oxygen." As they fitted a mask over Lily's face, her eyes widened in panic. She reached out a hand toward Ray. "It's okay," Ray assured her, taking her small hand in his. "Just breathe normal. It'll help clear your lungs." While the paramedics worked, the fire trucks continued to spray water on the burning house. It was a losing battle. The structure was nearly gone. Ray watched Lily's eyes drift toward what had been her home, and he squeezed her hand gently. "I'm sorry about your house," he said quietly. Lily's eyes welled with tears behind the oxygen mask. She pulled it away just enough to speak. "My mom," she said, her voice quavering. "She's at work. She doesn't know." "Someone will call her," Ray promised. "She'll be here soon." The paramedic examining Ray's ankle looked up. "Looks like a bad sprain. You should really go to the hospital for an X-ray." Ray shook his head. "Later." Lily pulled the oxygen mask away again. "I know you," she said suddenly, her voice small but clear. Ray blinked in surprise. "What's that, sweetheart?" "I know you," she repeated, tears spilling down her cheeks. "You helped my mommy. She has your picture." Ray stared at her, confused. "Your mommy?" Lily nodded earnestly. "When our car broke, she was crying. You gave her money and fixed our car." Her voice caught on a sob. "She said an angel helped us that day. She keeps the picture in her special box." Ray's mind raced back, trying to place the memory. 3 years ago? 4? A young woman stranded on the roadside with a small child. He'd stopped, fixed a loose battery cable, given her some cash when he saw how little she had. He barely remembered the interaction, just one of many moments on the road. "You told Mommy not to give up," Lily continued, her eyes never leaving his face. "You said things get better." Ray sat perfectly still, stunned into silence. The chaos around them seemed to fade away as he stared at the little girl's tear-streaked face. A car screeched to a halt at the edge of the growing crowd. The door flew open before the engine stopped, and a woman jumped out, her face tight with fear. "Lily!" she screamed, pushing through the onlookers. "My daughter! Where's my daughter?" Ray's head snapped up at the voice. Something about it tugged at his memory. The woman reached the police line, wild-eyed and desperate. "Please, my baby was in that house. Please let me through." An officer stepped forward. "Ma'am, are you the mother?" "Yes. Megan Harper. My daughter is Lily. Is she okay?" "Please tell me she's okay." The officer nodded and lifted the yellow tape. "She's safe, ma'am. She's being treated in the ambulance." Megan rushed forward, her eyes scanning frantically until they locked on the ambulance where Lily sat with Ray. Recognition hit her like a physical blow. She froze for just a second, then ran the remaining distance. "Lily! Oh my God! Lily!" Lily turned at her mother's voice. "Mommy!" she cried, pulling the oxygen mask away. Megan scooped her daughter into her arms, clutching her tightly. "Baby, are you okay? Are you hurt?" Her hands moved over Lily's face, hair, arms, checking for injuries. "I'm okay, Mommy," Lily said, her voice muffled against her mother's shoulder. "He saved me. The angel saved me." Ray shifted uncomfortably, trying to move aside to give them space. As he did, Megan looked up, really seeing him for the first time. Her eyes widened. "It's you," she whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. "It really is you." Ray nodded awkwardly, not knowing what to say. Up close he could see it now, the same woman from the roadside, though years had passed. She'd been thinner then, more desperate. Her eyes had held the same fear they held now, but for different reasons. "You saved my daughter," Megan said, her voice breaking. "Just did what anyone would do," Ray mumbled, looking down at his hands. "No," Megan shook her head firmly. "Not anyone. You." She reached out and touched his arm, her fingers trembling. "First me, now Lily. How can I ever thank you?" The paramedic gently interrupted. "Ma'am, we should really take your daughter to the hospital for observation. Smoke inhalation can have delayed effects." Megan nodded, not taking her eyes off Ray. "Of course." "I'll be fine here," Ray said, starting to back away. "He's hurt too," Lily piped up. "His foot. He should come with us." Megan looked at Ray's ankle, noticing for the first time how he was favoring it. "You should get that checked," she agreed. "Please, come with us." Before Ray could answer, a fire chief approached them, his face grim beneath his helmet. "Miss Harper?" he asked, addressing Megan. "Yes?" "I'm Chief Brennan. I need to ask you some questions about the property." Megan nodded, keeping one arm around Lily. "Of course." "Do you rent or own?" "Rent. We've been there almost 2 years now." The chief made a note. "Have you had any electrical problems recently? Flickering lights, power surges, that sort of thing?" Megan frowned. "Yes, actually. The outlets in the kitchen kept tripping the breaker, and the lights in Lily's room would dim sometimes." "Did you report this to your landlord?" "Multiple times," Megan said, her voice hardening. "Mr. Greaves said he'd look into it, but he never did. He said I was being too picky." The chief exchanged a look with a plainclothes investigator standing nearby. Based on our preliminary investigation, this appears to be an electrical fire that started in the walls, possibly faulty wiring that wasn't up to code. Megan's face paled. Are you saying this could have been prevented? We'll need to complete our investigation, but yes, that's possible. Ray watched as Megan's shoulders slumped, the weight of everything crashing down on her. She looked back at the smoldering remains of their home, then at Lily, then at the ground. Everything we have is in there, she whispered. Everything. Ray's brothers had gathered around, listening quietly. They exchanged glances, a silent communication born of years riding together. Bear gave a slight nod. Dagger crossed his arms. Hawk and Ghost moved closer to the group. Ray looked at them, understanding passing between them without a word. Then he turned back to Megan. The hospital first, he said quietly. Then we'll figure out the rest. The last fire truck pulled away just after midnight, red lights fading into the darkness. What remained of the Harper home stood in eerie silence, blackened walls, collapsed roof, and the acrid smell of smoke hanging heavy in the air. Megan stood at the edge of the property, arms wrapped tightly around herself. The hospital had cleared Lily after a few hours of observation, and Ray's ankle had been wrapped, just a minor sprain. But now, in the quiet aftermath, reality was sinking in. There's nothing left, she whispered. Ray stood a few feet away, his face unreadable in the shadows. There's always something, he said quietly. He gestured to his brothers, who had waited patiently nearby on their bikes. Bear, the biggest of the group, stepped forward. The back of the house looks less damaged. Might be some things we can save. Dagger pulled flashlights from his saddlebag and handed them out. Fire department said it's not safe to go inside, but we can check what's visible from the doorways. Megan looked at them with surprise. You don't have to do this. We know, Hawk said simply. The 5 men moved carefully around the perimeter of the house, shining lights through broken windows and doorways. Megan followed, holding Lily's hand. The little girl was exhausted but refused to leave her mother's side. Look, Ghost called out, pointing his light at something in the back bedroom. That dresser's still standing. Ray stepped carefully over debris, testing each board before putting his weight on it. The floor groaned but held. He reached the dresser and pulled open a drawer. Clothes, he called back. Some photos, too. Lily's face brightened. My bunny? She asked, hopefully. Is Mr. Floppy there? Ray looked back at her, then scanned the room more carefully. In the corner, partially covered by fallen drywall, he spotted a stuffed rabbit. He reached for it, brushing off soot and ash. This him? He asked, holding it up. Lily nodded vigorously, her eyes wide. Ray tucked the rabbit under his arm and carefully made his way back outside. He knelt in front of Lily and handed her the toy. He's a little dirty, but looks like he made it okay. Lily hugged Mr. Floppy tightly to her chest. Thank you, she whispered. For the next hour, they salvaged what they could. Clothes, photos, a small jewelry box of Megan's, some books, and important documents Megan had kept in a fireproof box. It wasn't much, but Megan's eyes filled with tears of gratitude. I don't know what we would have done without you all, she said, looking at each of the bikers. Where will you stay tonight? Bear asked. Megan sighed. I have some money saved, enough for a motel for a few days while I figure things out. Ray exchanged glances with his brothers. We know a place, he said. Clean, safe. Owner owes us a favor. 20 minutes later, they pulled into the parking lot of the Pine Woods Motel. It wasn't fancy, just a single-story row of rooms with peeling paint, but the lights were on, and it looked clean. Ray went in to talk to the manager while the others waited with Megan and Lily. He returned with a key. Room 12, it's paid up for the week. Megan started to protest, but Ray shook his head. Don't worry about it. They helped carry the salvaged belongings into the room. It was simple but decent. 2 beds, a small table with chairs, a tiny bathroom, and an old TV. Lily immediately climbed onto one of the beds, still clutching Mr. Floppy. Thank you, Megan said again, her voice cracking with emotion. I don't know how I'll ever repay you. You don't, Dagger said firmly. Bear nodded toward Lily, who was fighting to keep her eyes open. Get some rest. We'll be around. As they turned to leave, Lily suddenly sat up. Wait, she looked at Ray. Your jacket. You need it back. Ray had given her his leather jacket at the hospital when she'd been shivering. It swallowed her small frame, the sleeves hanging well past her hands. Keep it for tonight, Ray said. I've got others. Lily laid back down, pulling the jacket around her like a blanket. Her eyelids grew heavy. You'll come back tomorrow? She asked sleepily. Ray hesitated, then nodded. Yeah, we'll check on you. Megan walked them to the door. I don't understand why you're doing all this, she said quietly. Ray looked at her for a long moment. Some debts you don't repay. You just pass them forward. Outside, the other bikers mounted their motorcycles. Coming? Hawk asked. Ray shook his head. I'll stay a while. Make sure they're okay. His brothers nodded in understanding and rode off into the night. Ray settled onto a bench outside room 12, lighting a cigarette and staring into the darkness. Through the thin curtains, he could see Lily had finally fallen asleep, still wrapped in his jacket. He felt something unfamiliar stir in his chest, a sense of responsibility he hadn't experienced in years. Something about that little girl, her trust in him, made him feel both terrified and determined. Not tonight, he thought. Nothing would harm them tonight. Morning sunlight filtered through the thin motel curtains, casting weak yellow squares across the worn carpet. Ray shifted on the hard bench outside room 12, his back stiff from the night spent keeping watch. He hadn't planned to stay all night, but somehow couldn't bring himself to leave. Inside the room, Megan stirred first. For a brief, merciful moment between sleep and wakefulness, everything was normal. Then reality crashed back, the fire, the loss, the uncertainty stretching before them. She sat up slowly, careful not to wake Lily, who slept soundly in the next bed, still wrapped in Ray's oversized leather jacket. The soft knock at the door startled her. She pulled a salvaged sweater over her wrinkled clothes and opened the door a crack. Morning, Ray said quietly, his voice gravelly from lack of sleep. Brought coffee. He held up a cardboard tray with 2 cups and what looked like a small bag of pastries. Megan blinked in surprise, then opened the door wider. You stayed all night? She asked, accepting the coffee with a grateful nod. Wanted to make sure you were okay, he said simply, stepping inside. His eyes immediately went to Lily's sleeping form. Megan wrapped her hands around the warm cup. I don't think I slept more than an hour at a time, she admitted. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the flames again. She sank into one of the chairs by the small table. I keep thinking about everything we lost. My grandmother's recipe box. Lily's baby book. Things insurance can't replace, you know? Ray nodded, remaining standing near the door. What's your plan? He asked gently. Megan stared into her coffee. I don't know. I have some savings, but not much. I need to call work, explain what happened. Call Lily's school. Her voice wavered. Find somewhere more permanent to stay. Figure out if we can file a claim against the landlord for the faulty wiring. The magnitude of it all seemed to hit her at once, and she pressed a hand to her mouth. Mommy? Lily's small voice came from the bed. She sat up, Ray's jacket still draped around her shoulders, her hair tousled from sleep. When she spotted Ray, her face brightened. "You stayed." "Told you I would," Ray replied, his weathered face softening. Lily scrambled out of bed and came to stand beside him, looking tiny next to his tall frame. "Is our house better today?" Megan's eyes filled with tears. "No, sweetheart. Remember what we talked about? The house is gone. We can't go back there." Lily's face fell. "But where will we live? Where will Mr. Floppy live?" Before Megan could answer, there was another knock at the door. Ray opened it to find his 4 brothers standing outside, arms loaded with bags. "Brought breakfast," Bear announced, holding up a box of donuts. "And some other stuff you might need." They filed in, placing their offerings on the bed. Ghost had picked up toothbrushes, soap, and other toiletries. Hawk had found coloring books and crayons for Lily. Dagger produced a small stuffed bear. "Thought Mr. Floppy might want a friend," he explained gruffly when Lily gasped in delight. Ray watched Lily's face light up as she accepted the bear, hugging it to her chest alongside her rabbit. Something in his chest tightened. "We've been talking," Hawk said to Megan. "We know some people. Good people who can help with clothes, furniture, whatever you need to start over." "And Bear's brother works construction," Ghost added. "He can check out what happened with the wiring, maybe help with your claim." Megan looked overwhelmed. "Why are you doing all this? You don't even know us." The bikers exchanged glances. It was Dagger who finally spoke. "Sometimes the world doesn't give people like us much of a chance," he said quietly. "Judges us by how we look, what we ride, but we know what it's like to need help and not get it. Besides," Bear added with a grin, "we've got a reputation to protect. Can't have people thinking we're soft." Lily giggled at that, and even Megan managed a small smile. Ray, who had been quiet, finally spoke. "We're going to help you rebuild," he said, his eyes steady on Megan's. "Whatever that looks like." For the first time since the fire, Megan felt something like hope flickering to life. "First things first," Bear said, clapping his hands together. "Breakfast, then we make a plan." The afternoon sun beat down on Main Street as the 5 motorcycles rumbled to a stop outside Hartwell's general store. Ray cut his engine first, the others following suit. The sudden silence felt heavy, like the whole town was holding its breath. "All right," Ray said, pulling a folded paper from his jacket pocket. "We've got Megan's list. Should be able to get most of it here." Bear nodded, stretching his massive frame. "Clothes for the kid are most important. Growing up, I hated wearing other people's hand-me-downs." Ghost, the quietest of the group, scanned the street. People had stopped to stare. A mother pulling her children closer, an old man scowling from a bench, teenagers watching with curious eyes. "Feels like we're back in high school," Hawk muttered. "Everyone waiting for us to do something wrong." Ray ignored the stares. "Let's split up. Bear and Ghost, you handle clothes and shoes. Dagger, you're on school supplies. Hawk and I will get the toiletries and household stuff." They pushed through the door of the general store, the bell jingling cheerfully. Inside, the cool air smelled of cinnamon and fresh bread. The cashier, a thin woman with gray streaked hair, froze mid-sentence with a customer. "Afternoon," Ray said politely, tipping his head slightly. She didn't respond, just watched with wary eyes as they separated down different aisles. In the back corner, Hawk pulled a shopping basket off a stack. "Think they've got those cartoon toothbrushes kids like?" he asked, running a tattooed hand over his beard. "Next to the regular ones, probably," Ray replied, scanning the shelves. "Lily said she likes princesses." They moved through the store methodically, filling baskets with shampoo, conditioner, body wash, and a princess toothbrush that lit up when pressed. Ray added a hairbrush, elastics, and a pink detangling spray. Hawk raised an eyebrow. You know about kids' hair products? Ray shrugged. My sister had 3 girls. I remember the screaming when she tried combing their hair without that stuff. At the front of the store, Bear and Ghost were sorting through children's clothes, holding up different sizes and comparing them. The pink one, Bear decided, adding a t-shirt to their growing pile. Kids need color. A middle-aged woman browsing nearby clutched her purse tighter and hurried to another aisle. Ghost noticed and sighed. Some things never change, he said softly. Meanwhile, Dagger stood in the school supply section, completely overwhelmed. He stared at the wall of notebooks, pencils, markers, and binders. Can I help you find something? A voice asked. Dagger turned to see a young store clerk, maybe 25, with kind eyes and a cautious smile. Yeah, thanks, Dagger said, relief evident in his voice. Need school supplies for an 8-year-old girl. Her house burned down yesterday. The clerk's eyes widened. The Harper place. I heard about that. I heard. Are they okay? Dagger nodded. They're safe. Just need to replace everything. That's awful, the clerk said, genuine concern in his voice. Let me help you put together what she'll need. As they gathered supplies, Ray and Hawk joined them, baskets full. Getting everything okay? Ray asked. Mike here's helping, Dagger replied, gesturing to the clerk. The store manager appeared at the end of the aisle, eyeing them suspiciously. Everything all right over here, Michael? Just fine, Mrs. Hartwell, Mike answered, helping these gentlemen get supplies for the Harper family. Mrs. Hartwell's stern face softened slightly. The fire victims. Ray stepped forward. Yes, ma'am. Just trying to help them get back on their feet. She studied him for a long moment. You're the ones who pulled the little girl out? The bikers exchanged glances. We did what anyone would do, Ray said simply. Sorghum. Hartwell's expression changed, something like respect flickering across her features. She glanced at their overflowing baskets. Michael, when they're ready to check out, apply the emergency discount, she said. Then to the bikers. 20% off for folks in need. Been our policy since my father opened this store 50 years ago. We appreciate that, Ray said with a nod. And, she added, if you give me a list of what else they need, I can put the word out to some church groups. People around here take care of their own. Bear looked surprised. Even when their own includes us. Mrs. Hartwell's mouth quirked up in the corner. You saved one of our children. That counts for something in Hartwell. She paused, then added, I might have judged too quickly. Wouldn't be the first time. As Mrs. Hartwell walked away, the bikers shared looks of surprise. Well, I'll be damned, Hawk murmured. Sometimes people surprise you, Mike said with a smile, adding a package of colorful erasers to Dagger's basket. Not everyone in town is quick to judge. That afternoon, the sun hung high overhead as Ray, Bear, and Ghost pulled up to what remained of the Harper farmhouse. The motorcycle's rumble faded to silence, leaving only the rustle of wind through charred timber and the occasional creak of unstable wood. Yellow caution tape fluttered around the perimeter, a stark warning against the blue sky. Ray dismounted first, his boots crunching on the gravel driveway. Fire marshal said we could go in, but be careful. Floor might be weak in spots. Bear nodded, his massive frame casting a long shadow. What exactly are we looking for? Anything worth saving, Ray replied, surveying the blackened structure. Photos? Keepsakes? Megan said Lily has a stuffed rabbit somewhere in there. Purple with one ear. Ghost pulled work gloves from his back pocket. Poor kid. Losing your home is hard enough without losing the things that make it home. The 3 men ducked under the caution tape and approached the house cautiously. The front porch had partially collapsed, forcing them to enter through what was once the kitchen door. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of wet ash and melted plastic. Sunlight streamed through holes in the roof, illuminating dancing dust particles in eerie beams. "Watch your step," Ray warned, testing each floorboard before putting his full weight on it. The kitchen had suffered the least damage, though everything was covered in soot and water damage from the firefighters' hoses. Bear opened a drawer and pulled out some silverware. "Might be able to clean these up," he said, placing them in a plastic bin they'd brought. Ghost moved toward what was once the living room. "Family photos might be in here." Ray stood in the center of the kitchen for a moment, remembering Lily's terrified face through the smoke. How small she had felt in his arms. Something pulled him toward the hallway that led to the bedrooms, to the place where he'd found her. The hallway was in worse shape, with parts of the ceiling collapsed. Ray stepped carefully over debris, checking each spot before proceeding. The first bedroom, clearly Megan's, was a mess of charred furniture and waterlogged belongings. He knelt beside the dresser, pulling open a drawer that had survived the worst of the flames. Inside were some clothes, soaked but salvageable. In the bottom drawer, he found a small wooden box, its lid warped from heat but still intact. He opened it gently to find a handful of jewelry. Nothing expensive, but items with clear sentimental value. A locket, a charm bracelet, a pair of simple pearl earrings. Ray placed the box carefully in his collection bin and continued down the hall. Lily's room was where the fire had been most intense. The ceiling had partly collapsed, and the bed where he'd found her was nothing but a charred frame. Ray felt a tightness in his chest as he surveyed the destruction. "Hey," Bear called from the doorway, hesitant to enter the unstable room. "You okay in there?" Ray nodded without turning. "Yeah, just taking it in." He moved carefully to what remained of a small desk in the corner. The plastic toys that had once sat on top had melted into unrecognizable lumps. But underneath, in a partially protected drawer, he spotted a flash of purple. Gently, he pulled out a singed stuffed rabbit, one ear missing, the other hanging by a few threads. Its purple fur was darkened with soot, but it was unmistakably the toy Lily had mentioned. "Found it," he said, his voice unexpectedly rough. He tucked the rabbit carefully into his jacket. As he turned to leave, something caught his eye. Near the window, a small bookshelf had fallen, its contents spilled across the floor. Among the damaged books was a photo album, its cover blackened but the inside pages partially protected. Ray knelt and carefully opened it. Most photos were damaged beyond recognition, but in the middle section, protected by plastic sleeves, a few had survived. He found one of Megan holding a much younger Lily, both smiling at the camera in front of a Christmas tree. The edges were singed, and water damage had caused the colors to run slightly, but their faces were clear, happy, hopeful, unaware of what was to come. Ray stared at the photo for a long moment, his weathered fingers tracing the edge gently. These two had already lost so much before the fire, and now this. He slipped the photo into his pocket and stood up straight, a new determination hardening his features. "Find anything?" Ghost called from another room. "Yeah," Ray answered, his voice steady with resolve. "Found exactly what I needed." That evening, the motel room glowed with soft lamplight as Lily finally drifted to sleep, clutching her restored purple rabbit. Ray and his brothers had spent hours carefully cleaning the toy with gentle soap and a soft brush, stitching its dangling ear back in place and drying it with a hairdryer borrowed from the motel office. Their massive hands, used to gripping handlebars and throwing punches, had worked with surprising gentleness on the small stuffed animal. Now, Megan sat at the small table by the window, nursing a cup of coffee as Ray leaned against the wall near the door. The other bikers had returned to their own rooms for the night, leaving a strange quiet broken only by the occasional hum of a passing car or the distant sound of the ice machine. "She wouldn't let go of that rabbit?" Megan said softly, looking over at her sleeping daughter. "Thank you for finding it." Ray shrugged, uncomfortable with gratitude. "Wasn't much left. Got lucky, that's all." Megan studied him, her eyes tired but determined. "She told me you didn't believe her, about knowing you before." Ray shifted his weight, glancing away. "Figured she was confused. Smoke does that to people." "She wasn't confused." Megan set her coffee cup down. "It was about 6 years ago, just outside of Millbrook. My car broke down with a busted radiator hose. I had no money, no phone, and a 2-year-old in the back seat." Ray's eyes narrowed slightly as a fuzzy memory started to take shape. "I was walking along the highway with Lily in my arms when this group of bikers pulled over." Megan's voice grew softer. "Everyone always told me to be afraid of men like you, but I was already at rock bottom. Nowhere to go, running from a bad situation at home." Ray remembered now. A young woman with desperate eyes, holding a toddler too tightly, the highway stretching empty in both directions. "One of them, you, asked what was wrong," Megan continued. "I told you and you just nodded and got to work. Fixed my car with a piece of hose from one of your bikes. Then you gave me $60 and told me which town ahead had the cheapest motel." Ray remembered the cash. He'd won it in a pool game the night before. "Easy come, easy go." "Before you left," Megan said, her voice catching slightly, "you told me something I never forgot. You said, 'Whatever you're running from, you're doing the right thing. Keep going.'" Ray looked down at his hands. He had no memory of saying those words, but they sounded like something he might have growled to a scared young woman. "I was leaving Lily's father," Megan explained. "He was not a good man. I was terrified, second-guessing myself, wondering if I was making a huge mistake." She took a deep breath. "But something about the way you said it, like you just knew I was doing the right thing, it gave me the courage to keep driving, to not turn back." The motel room fell silent, except for Lily's soft breathing. "That day changed everything for us," Megan said. "I found a job in the next town, got an apartment, started over, and now here we are, starting over again." Ray stood motionless, absorbing her words. He remembered the woman and child on the roadside, just one of the dozens of people he'd helped over the years when nobody was looking. Small kindnesses that his brotherhood would never mention, that contradicted their fearsome reputation. He'd never thought about what happened after, never imagined his words echoing through years, never considered that a small repair and some cash might reshape lives. Ray looked at Lily, sleeping peacefully, holding the rabbit he'd rescued from ashes. The same little girl who'd once been a toddler in her mother's desperate arms. "Funny how things come around," he said finally, his gruff voice unusually gentle. Megan nodded, wiping away a tear. "Life has a way of bringing us full circle, I guess." Ray pushed off from the wall and moved toward the door, suddenly needing air. But before he left, he paused, looking back at mother and daughter. 6 years ago, he'd helped them and ridden away without a second thought. This time would be different. The morning sunlight filtered through thin motel curtains, painting stripes across the worn carpet. Ray sat at the small table outside the room, drinking coffee from a paper cup. He'd spent most of the night there, watching the parking lot, unable to sleep after hearing Megan's story. The door creaked open, and Lily appeared, her hair tousled from sleep. She clutched her purple rabbit under one arm and rubbed her eyes with her free hand. "Mom's still sleeping," she said quietly, looking up at Ray. "She was crying last night after you left." Ray nodded, unsure what to say. He wasn't good with words, especially not with kids. "You hungry?" he asked finally. Lily shrugged. "A little." Ray stood and walked to his motorcycle, parked nearby. He pulled a small paper bag from the saddlebag and returned, offering it to Lily. Inside was a chocolate muffin he'd picked up at dawn from the gas station down the street. Lily's face brightened slightly as she took it. "Thank you." She climbed onto the chair next to him, her legs dangling, and broke the muffin in half, offering a part back to Ray. The simple gesture caught him off guard. He took it with a nod of thanks. They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, watching cars pass on the road beyond the parking lot. A dog barked somewhere in the distance. "I can't sleep good," Lily said suddenly, her voice small. "I keep seeing the fire when I close my eyes." Ray set his coffee down, giving her his full attention. "I was so scared," she continued, staring at her half-eaten muffin. "I tried to get out, but I couldn't find the door. Everything was all smoky and it hurt to breathe." Her voice trembled. "I thought nobody would come." Ray felt something tighten in his chest. "That's tough stuff, kid." Lily nodded, her fingers nervously petting her rabbit's ear. "I have dreams where I'm still in there, and nobody finds me." A tear slipped down her cheek. "And sometimes I dream the fire comes back, even when we're here." Ray shifted in his chair, facing her more directly. He'd faced down rival gangs without blinking, but this little girl's tears made him feel helpless. "Those are just dreams," he said gently. "Your brain's trying to make sense of scary things that happened." "But what if there's another fire?" Lily asked, her voice barely a whisper. Ray thought for a moment. Then he pointed to the motel room. "See that fire alarm right there, and the sprinklers on the ceiling, and the exit sign? Those keep you safe." Lily followed his gaze, but didn't look convinced. "And you got me and my brothers watching out too," Ray added. "We take turns keeping an eye on your door all night. Nothing gets past us." Lily's eyes widened slightly. "Really? All night?" Ray nodded. "All night." She seemed to consider this, absently stroking her rabbit's ear. "I named him Ray," she said suddenly, holding up the purple bunny. "After you." Something warm and unfamiliar spread through Ray's chest. He cleared his throat, not trusting his voice. "I'm scared about other things, too," Lily continued, the words tumbling out now that she'd started talking. "I'm scared we won't have a home again, and that Mom will be sad forever, and that the people at school will make fun of me because all my stuff burned up." Ray listened, really listened, as this little girl poured out fears that no 8-year-old should have to carry. "And sometimes," her voice dropped even lower, "I get scared that you might leave, like my dad did." Ray went very still. He'd faced down countless dangers without flinching, but this child's simple fear struck him to the core. "Listen," he said finally, his voice rough but gentle. "I can't promise everything will be fixed fast. Grown-up problems take time, but I'm not going anywhere until you and your mom are okay. That's a promise." Lily looked up at him, her eyes searching his face for truth. What she found there seemed to satisfy her, because she nodded and leaned against his arm. "You want to know something?" Ray asked, surprising himself. Lily nodded. "Everybody gets scared sometimes. Even me." "You?" Lily looked doubtful. "What are you scared of?" Ray thought for a moment. "Letting down people who are counting on me," he said honestly. Lily considered this, then held out her pinky finger. "We can be brave together. Pinky promise." Ray looked at her tiny extended finger, then carefully wrapped his own pinky around it. "Pinky promise," he agreed. News traveled fast in small towns. By noon the next day, word of the bikers' rescue and continued presence had spread through the community like wildfire. Ray noticed the shift when he walked into the local grocery store. Instead of the usual suspicious glances, he caught curious looks and hesitant nods. He grabbed a cart and started collecting essentials: bread, milk, eggs, and fruit. Lily needed proper meals, not just gas station muffins. As he examined a box of cereal, checking if it was something a kid would like, he felt someone approach. "You're one of them, aren't you? The bikers who saved that little girl from the fire?" Ray turned to find an elderly woman with silver hair and kind eyes looking up at him. "Yes, ma'am," he answered simply. The woman smiled. "My grandson told me what happened. Said you ran straight into those flames without thinking twice." She reached out and patted his arm. "That was a brave thing you did." Ray shifted uncomfortably under the praise. Anyone would have done the same. "But they didn't," she said firmly. "You did." She glanced at his card. "Is that for the family?" Ray nodded. "Wait right here." The woman disappeared down an aisle, returning minutes later with coloring books and crayons. She placed them in Ray's cart. "For the little one. Children need something to keep their hands busy when their hearts are troubled." "Thank you," Ray said, surprised by the gesture. At the checkout, the cashier, a young woman with a name tag reading Jenny, rang up his items with a smile. "No charge today," she said. "Manager's orders?" Ray started to protest, but Jenny shook her head. "He says it's the least we can do. Besides, there's a collection jar by the register now, for the Harper family." Sure enough, a large glass jar sat on the counter, already half filled with bills and change. A handwritten sign read, "Help the Harper Family Rebuild," with a small photo of Megan and Lily that must have come from the local school. Back at the motel, Ray found Mike, one of his brothers from the crew, talking with Sheriff Tom Wilkes in the parking lot. The sheriff had been skeptical of their presence at first, but his stance had visibly softened. "Ray," the sheriff nodded in greeting. "Just telling your friend here that we've got some developments on the landlord situation. Turns out he's had 3 violations in the past year alone. We're building a case." Ray set the groceries down. "Good. Man needs to be held accountable." "Communities coming together for them," Sheriff Wilkes continued. "Churches collecting clothes, hardware stores offering materials at cost for rebuilding. School principal called me this morning. They're holding a fundraiser next week." Mike grinned at Ray. "And get this, the diner where we stopped that night, they're donating all their tips for the next month to Megan and Lily." Ray absorbed this information with quiet amazement. He'd spent decades being feared and avoided by regular folks. The sudden shift to acceptance felt strange, almost uncomfortable. Inside the motel room, Lily was showing Megan a drawing she'd made. She jumped up when Ray entered with the bags. "Look what I made," she said, holding up her picture. It showed 5 motorcycles in a row, with stick figures wearing what appeared to be leather jackets. "That's us," Ray said, recognizing the simple representation of his brotherhood. Lily nodded eagerly. "And this is me and Mom," she added, pointing to 2 smaller figures standing beside the bikers. The phone rang, and Megan answered it. Her expression changed from confusion to surprise as she listened. "That was the motel manager," she said after hanging up. "Someone paid for our room for the next 2 weeks, and he says people have been calling all morning asking how they can help." A knock at the door revealed 2 teenage girls holding boxes of clothes and toys. "Our mom sent these," one explained. "We heard what happened. Is there anything else you need?" By evening, the small motel room was overflowing with donations. Clothes, toys, gift cards, home-cooked meals, and handwritten cards from strangers. Megan sat on the bed, overwhelmed by the generosity. "I don't understand," she whispered, tears in her eyes. "We've lived here for 3 years, and some of these people never even said hello before." Ray watched from the doorway as Lily carefully arranged her new treasures. Sometimes it takes something big to make people see what matters, he said quietly. Outside, 2 more cars pulled into the parking lot, bringing additional donations. The sheriff stood directing traffic, while Ray's brothers helped carry items into a second room the motel had provided for storage. The community that had once eyed them with suspicion was now working alongside them, united by a common purpose. The evening shadows stretched long across the motel parking lot as Ray leaned against his bike, watching Megan sort through the day's donations. Something caught his eye, a small calendar that had fallen from one of the boxes. He picked it up, noting today's date circled in red marker. A memory flashed in his mind. Last night, while Lily had been falling asleep, she'd mentioned something about cake. At the time, Ray had thought it was just a hungry child's wishful thinking. "Hey," he called softly to Megan. "Is today something special?" Megan looked up, confusion crossing her face before her eyes widened in horror. "Oh my God," she whispered. "It's Lily's birthday. With everything that happened, I completely forgot." Ray straightened up, decision made instantly. "How old?" "9, Megan said, her voice breaking. "She's turning 9 today, and I didn't even remember." Ray nodded once, then walked over to where his brothers were sorting supplies. He gathered them in a tight circle, speaking in hushed tones. Within minutes, they had a plan. "We need an hour," Ray told Megan. "Keep her in the room. Tell her we're bringing dinner." The 4 bikers roared out of the parking lot on their motorcycles, splitting up at the main road. Each had a mission. Inside the motel room, Lily sat cross-legged on the bed, carefully coloring in one of her new books. She hadn't mentioned her birthday. After everything that had happened, maybe she'd forgotten too. Or maybe, Ray thought as he pulled into the grocery store parking lot, she just didn't want to add to her mother's worries. An hour later, the Brotherhood reconvened at the motel. Mike carried a small chocolate cake with 9 candles. Bear had balloons and streamers. Diesel brought a gift bag. Ray had managed to find a banner that read "Happy Birthday" in bright colors. They worked quickly, transforming the empty motel room next door. The manager, now fully supportive of their efforts, had offered it for the evening. Bear, despite his massive hands, delicately hung streamers from the ceiling fan. Mike arranged plates and plastic forks on the small table. Diesel blew up balloons, his tattooed arms straining with the effort. Ray stood back, surveying their work. It wasn't much, not like the birthdays some kids had with bounce houses and clowns. But it was something to show Lily that even after losing nearly everything, there were still reasons to celebrate. "Ready," he texted Megan. When the door opened, Lily entered first, her eyes growing wide as dinner plates. The 4 burly bikers stood awkwardly around the room, attempting to look casual beside the colorful decorations. "Happy birthday!" they shouted in unison, their deep voices creating a thunderous chorus that made the windows rattle. Lily froze, her mouth open in shock. For a terrible moment, Ray worried they'd scared her. Then her face transformed with a smile so bright it seemed to light up the entire room. "You remembered," she gasped, looking from the cake to the balloons to the bikers. "Course we did, Squirt," Bear said, his voice gentler than his appearance would suggest. "Can't have a birthday without cake." Lily turned to her mother, who was wiping tears from her eyes. "Mom, did you know?" "These guys did all the work," Megan admitted. "I've been a little distracted." "Come on," Ray said, guiding Lily to the table where the cake waited, candles unlit. "Make a wish." Mike produced a lighter, carefully lighting each of the 9 candles. The small flames danced, casting golden light on Lily's face as she closed her eyes tight, thinking hard before blowing them all out in one determined breath. They sang, 5 adults with rough voices singing "Happy Birthday" while Lily beamed. Diesel presented his gift bag with surprising shyness. Inside was a small, stuffed bear wearing a tiny leather vest. "Made it myself," he mumbled, looking embarrassed. "From some scrap leather." Lily hugged the bear to her chest, then threw her arms around Diesel's waist. The massive biker patted her head awkwardly, his expression softening. They ate cake and ice cream, told silly jokes, and for a while, the trauma of the fire seemed distant. Lily laughed, really laughed, as Bear tried to fit a balloon hat on his enormous head, and the sound was like music in the simple motel room. Morning light filtered through thin motel curtains as Megan sat at the small table, nervously straightening her only presentable blouse. She'd been up since dawn, preparing for the meeting with insurance adjusters and fire investigators. Ray had offered to watch Lily while she handled the business side of their disaster. "You don't have to look so worried," Ray said from the doorway, coffee cup in his massive hand. "It's just paperwork." Megan attempted a smile but failed. "Paperwork determines if we have a future or not." The night before had been magical, a birthday celebration carved from nothing. But morning brought reality back in harsh focus. They were still homeless, still dependent on charity, still vulnerable. "I'll be back as soon as I can," Megan said, kissing Lily's forehead. "Be good for Ray." Lily nodded, already absorbed in coloring with her new markers, the stuffed bear propped beside her. The county building stood gray and imposing against the blue sky. Megan clutched her folder of documents, rental agreement, receipts, the few papers she'd managed to save from the fire. Her stomach twisted with each step up the concrete stairs. Inside, fluorescent lights hummed overhead as she was directed to a conference room where 3 people waited: a fire inspector, an insurance adjuster, and a man in an expensive suit she didn't recognize. "Mrs. Harper," the inspector began. "Ms.," she corrected quietly. "Ms. Harper," he amended. "I'm Chief Roberts. We've completed our preliminary investigation of the fire at 1422 Oak Ridge Road." The inspector placed several photographs on the table. Megan flinched at images of charred walls and exposed wiring. "The fire originated in the electrical panel," he explained. "Years of improper modifications, outdated wiring, and general neglect created a serious fire hazard." Megan nodded. "I complained about the electricity. Several times. The lights would flicker whenever I used the oven." "We have your complaint records," Roberts confirmed. "Unfortunately, that's where things get complicated." The man in the expensive suit cleared his throat. "I'm Andrew Jennings, representing the property owner." His voice was smooth, practiced. "While this situation is certainly unfortunate, my client maintains that he received no written documentation of electrical issues. The rental agreement clearly states that all maintenance concerns must be submitted in writing." "I called him," Megan protested. "Multiple times." "Do you have phone records to verify these calls?" Jennings asked. Megan fell silent. Her phone had been in the house during the fire. The insurance adjuster, a woman with tired eyes, spoke next. "Without documentation of negligence, we're limited in what we can cover. Your renter's insurance will provide the basic benefit, but—" "Basic benefit?" Megan interrupted. "We lost everything." "The policy covers $10,000 in personal property," the woman explained. "After your deductible, that's $9,000. "That won't even cover half of what we lost," Megan whispered. "What about where we're going to live?" "Without proof of landlord negligence, additional living expenses are limited to 2 weeks, the adjuster said. "I'm sorry." Megan felt the room tilt. 2 weeks. They had temporary shelter for only 2 more weeks. "This isn't right," she said, her voice stronger than she felt. He knew about the wiring problems. Everyone in the neighborhood knew. The previous tenants told him too. Jennings smiled thinly. "Hearsay, unfortunately. My client has maintained the property according to code requirements. The last inspection was passed 3 years ago." 3 years? Megan's voice rose. And nothing since then. No law requires more frequent inspections, Jennings replied smoothly. The meeting continued, a blur of legal terms and limitations. By the time Megan left the building, her hope had crumbled to ash, much like her home. She sat in her car, hands trembling too much to insert the key. A tap on her window startled her. It was the fire inspector, Roberts. "Ms. Harper," he said when she rolled down the window. "Off the record? That landlord is a snake. He's had code violations before, but he knows how to work the system. So there's nothing I can do." Roberts hesitated. "I didn't say that. Keep pushing." And he glanced around before continuing. "Expect a visit from Child Protective Services. It's standard procedure when a family with children experiences displacement due to fire. Just a heads up." Megan's heart sank further. "CPS? Why? I didn't do anything wrong." "It's just protocol," Roberts assured her. "But given your current living situation..." He didn't need to finish. Living in a motel, no permanent address, limited resources. It would raise red flags for any child welfare agency. "Thank you," Megan managed. She drove back to the motel in a daze. When she arrived, a woman in a navy blazer was already there, speaking with the manager and taking notes. The state car with government plates confirmed Megan's worst fears. CPS hadn't waited. They were already investigating. Lily sat cross-legged on the motel bed, her new coloring book open in front of her. The room smelled like coffee and fast food. Ray had gotten her chicken nuggets for lunch, and she'd eaten them while watching cartoons on the small TV. "Your mom should be back soon," Ray said. He sat in the chair by the window, his large frame making the furniture look tiny. Every few minutes, he'd peek through the curtains, watching for Megan's car. Lily nodded but kept coloring. The princess in her picture was supposed to have a yellow dress, but the yellow crayon was almost gone. She pressed harder, trying to make the color show up better. The door opened and Megan walked in. Her face looked tired, like when she worked double shifts at her old job. "Hey, sweetie," Megan said, forcing a smile. "How was your day with Ray?" "Good," Lily answered. "We had nuggets." Ray stood up. "Everything okay?" he asked Megan in a quiet voice. Megan shook her head slightly. "We need to talk," she whispered. "Outside." Lily pretended to focus on her coloring, but she watched them step just outside the door. They left it cracked open, probably thinking she couldn't hear them. But she could hear just fine if she listened carefully. "It's bad," Megan was saying. "The landlord's lawyer says there's no proof he knew about the wiring problems. Insurance will barely cover anything." "We'll figure something out," Ray said. "The guys and I can..." "That's not all," Megan cut him off. Her voice sounded shaky. "CPS is involved now." "CPS?" Ray asked. "Child Protective Services," Megan explained. "They're already here, talking to the motel manager. The fire inspector warned me they'd come, but I didn't think it would be this fast." Lily's crayon stopped moving. She knew what Child Protective Services was. A girl in her class had been taken away by them last year. She never came back to school. "What do they want?" Ray's voice had gotten lower, the way it did when he was upset. "To make sure Lily is safe," Megan said. "But we're living in a motel. I have no job, no home. They could..." Her voice broke. "They could say she's not safe with me." "They'd take her?" Ray sounded angry now. "They might," Megan whispered. "At least temporarily until we're more stable." Lily's heart began to pound. Take her away? Away from her mom? Away from Ray and the others who had saved her? She dropped her crayon and stared at the door, straining to hear more. "That's not happening," Ray said firmly. "We won't let it." "I don't know what to do," Megan's voice cracked. "If they decide I can't provide a safe environment..." Lily couldn't hear the rest. Her ears were filling with a rushing sound, like when she put a seashell up to them at the beach last summer. "Take her away! Take her away!" The words echoed in her head. The door opened, and Megan came back inside, Ray following behind her. Lily quickly looked down at her coloring book, pretending she hadn't been listening. "Lily," Megan said, sitting on the edge of the bed. "How about we go get some ice cream later? Would you like that?" Lily nodded, but she couldn't meet her mother's eyes. All she could think about was being taken away, put in a strange place with strange people. No mom, no Ray, no more birthday parties or chicken nuggets or coloring books. "You okay, kid?" Ray asked, noticing her stillness. "I'm tired," Lily mumbled. "Want to take a nap?" Megan suggested, brushing hair from Lily's forehead. "Okay," Lily said, even though she wasn't tired at all. Megan tucked her in, kissed her cheek, and went to the bathroom. Lily heard the shower start running. Ray sat back down in his chair. "Your mom's having a tough day," he said, "but we're gonna fix everything, okay?" Normally, when Ray said things would be okay, Lily believed him. He had pulled her from the fire, after all. But now she remembered what her mom had said. They might take her away. Even Ray couldn't stop that. "Can I be alone?" Lily asked quietly. Ray looked surprised. "Sure, kid. I'll be right outside if you need me." When he left, Lily curled up under the covers, hugging her stuffed bear tightly. Tears filled her eyes. She thought about the girl from her class who disappeared. Would she disappear too? Later, when Ray brought her a juice box, she pretended to be asleep. When he gently touched her shoulder, she didn't respond. It was better not to get too close anymore, not when they might take her away tomorrow or the next day. Better to pull away now than have everything taken later. Darkness settled over the motel, painting shadows across the parking lot. Ray sat on his motorcycle, one boot on the ground, staring at the door to room 112, where Megan and Lily were staying. The neon vacancy sign buzzed and flickered, casting an unnatural blue glow across his weathered face. Inside his leather jacket pocket, he fingered the burner phone he'd bought last week. 3 missed calls from his brothers, probably wondering where he'd disappeared to. The club didn't ask questions when someone needed space, but 5 days was pushing it. He hadn't meant to stay this long, just until he knew the girl was okay. Ray rubbed his eyes, feeling the weight of the day pressing down on him. The conversation with Megan replayed in his mind. Child Protective Services. The threat of Lily being taken away. And then Lily's sudden change. How she'd pulled away, avoided his eyes, pretended to be asleep. Smart kid. She'd heard everything. A car door slammed somewhere in the parking lot, making Ray tense instinctively. Just a couple checking in, laughing together as they walked to the office. He looked down at his hands. Rough, calloused, scarred from fights and work and years on the road. Not the hands that should be around a child. He'd told himself that for years when thinking about settling down, having kids of his own. "Who am I kidding?" he muttered. The sheriff's deputy this morning hadn't said it out loud, but Ray caught the look. The way his eyes had moved from Ray's patches to Megan, then to Lily. The unspoken question, what's a woman and child doing with a HELLS angel? Ray knew that look, had seen it his entire adult life. He started his bike, the familiar rumble vibrating through his body. Better to go now. His presence wasn't helping Megan's case with CPS. A known HELLS angel hanging around wasn't exactly the stable environment they'd be looking for. He'd have the guys keep tabs on them, make sure they were taken care of. Maybe find them a place to stay that wasn't a motel. He could do more for them from a distance. The curtain in room 112 moved slightly. Lily's small face appeared in the window, illuminated by the television's glow. She was supposed to be asleep. Their eyes met briefly before Ray looked away, feeling something twist in his chest. "Just go," he told himself, revving the engine once. The motel room door opened. Lily stepped out, wearing pajamas with cartoon cats on them. Her feet were bare on the rough concrete. She clutched her stuffed bear in one arm. Ray cut the engine. "Where are you going?" Her voice was small but clear in the night air. "Just checking on my bike," Ray lied. "You should be in bed, kid." Lily took another step toward him. "You're leaving." It wasn't a question. Ray said nothing, caught between truth and comfort. "Mom's asleep," Lily said. "She took medicine for her headache." Ray nodded. "I'll be back tomorrow. Go on inside now." "No, you won't." Lily hugged her bear tighter. "You're leaving for real." Ray sighed, swinging his leg off the bike and crouching down to her level. "Listen, Lily. You said I was safe with you." Her voice cracked a little. "In the fire. You said you're safe with us now." "Were you just saying that?" The words hit Ray like a physical blow. He remembered that moment, carrying her through smoke and flame, her tiny body trembling against his chest, those words coming from somewhere deep inside him. Not planned. Just true. "I meant it," he said quietly. "Then why are you leaving?" Tears welled in her eyes. "The people are coming to take me away, and you're leaving." "I'm not helping, Lily." Ray looked down at his cut, the leather vest with his patches that marked him as HELLS Angel. "People like me. We make things complicated. Your mom needs to show them she can take care of you properly." "But you saved me," Lily said, a tear spilling down her cheek. "Why would that be bad?" Ray had no answer that made sense. Not to an 8-year-old. Not to himself, really. "You promised," Lily whispered, the words barely audible. Ray looked at her standing there, small, brave, and utterly vulnerable, and felt something crack inside him. The wall he'd spent years building between himself and anything that might hurt too much when lost. Ray glanced towards the motel room, then back to Lily. Her tear-streaked face in the neon light broke something inside him. "Come here," he said, moving to sit on the curb beside his motorcycle. He patted the concrete next to him. "Sit down for a minute." Lily hesitated, then padded over on her bare feet and sat beside him, her stuffed bear clutched tightly to her chest. "Your feet are gonna get cold," Ray said, shrugging off his leather jacket and wrapping it around her small shoulders. It swallowed her completely, the sleeves hanging well past her hands. They sat in silence for a moment, Ray staring at the asphalt while Lily watched his face. "You know," he finally said, his voice rough around the edges, "I haven't always done right by people." Lily didn't answer, just waited. "When I was younger, about 20 or so, I had a brother. Not a blood brother, but a brother in here." He tapped his chest. "Name was Tommy. Good kid. Looked up to me something fierce." Ray picked up a small stone and rolled it between his fingers. "Tommy got himself into some bad business. Nothing to do with the club, just made some poor choices. Owed money to some dangerous folks." Ray tossed the stone away. "He came to me for help. I was busy with club stuff. Told him to handle it himself. Be a man." The parking lot fell quiet, except for the distant sound of a television from another room and the buzz of the neon sign. 3 days later, they found him. Beat so bad his own mama couldn't recognize him. Ray's voice grew thicker. "I could have helped him, should have helped him, but I didn't want the hassle." Lily shifted closer until her shoulder pressed against his arm. "Then there was this woman at a truck stop, few years back. Car broke down, 2 little ones in the back seat, no money for a tow. I gave her $20 for gas and drove off. Could have done more. Fixed her car. Made sure they got home safe. But I didn't." Ray looked down at Lily. "See, I keep thinking about all the times I could have done something that mattered, and I didn't. Just kept riding, kept moving. Like I was always heading somewhere important, but truth is, I was just running. Running from what? Lily asked, her voice small but clear. Ray thought about it. From caring too much, I guess. Caring hurts sometimes. Like how my chest hurts when I think about the fire. Yeah, Ray nodded. Like that. Lily leaned her head against his arm. But you ran into the fire. For me. I did. Why? Ray considered the question. Don't rightly know. Just knew I couldn't keep riding this time. They sat together for several long moments, the night air cool around them. When those people come, Lily said finally, the ones who might take me away, will you be gone? Ray looked at her, this small person who somehow trusted him completely, who had seen the worst night of her life and still believed things could be okay because he had told her so. No, he said firmly. I won't be gone. You promise? Her eyes searched his face. I promise. He put his arm around her shoulders. I don't run from family, and you're family now. Lily's eyes widened. Really? Really? Ray nodded. You and your mom, you got me now. And the others too. We're going to fix this. How? I don't know yet, but we will. He squeezed her shoulder gently. I've spent too many years looking back at things I should have done different. Not this time. Lily leaned against him, the tension leaving her small body. I knew you wouldn't leave. How's that? She looked up at him with complete certainty in her eyes. Because you're the kind of person who goes into fires. Ray felt something warm spread through his chest, something he hadn't felt in a very long time. Something like purpose, something like home. Let's get you back inside before your mom wakes up and thinks you've been kidnapped, he said, standing and helping her to her feet. And I need to make some calls. To the other angels? Ray nodded. We've got work to do. Ray woke early the next morning, his back stiff from another night spent on the motel room's small pull-out chair. He rubbed his eyes and glanced over at the two beds where Megan and Lily slept peacefully. Lily had the stuffed bear tucked under her chin, her face relaxed in sleep for once. Moving quietly, Ray stepped outside into the crisp morning air. The sun was just beginning to paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. He pulled out his phone and sent a quick text to his brothers. Meeting, 7 a.m., diner across the street. By 6:55, Ray was sliding into a booth at the small roadside diner. The place was nearly empty except for a couple of truckers at the counter. One by one, his brothers arrived. Diesel first, then Hawk, followed by Bones and Tank. They ordered coffee and spoke in low voices. We need to do something about this landlord, Ray said, wrapping his weathered hands around his coffee mug. Can't let him get away with what he did to that little girl and her mom. Diesel, the oldest of the group with salt and pepper hair and deep-set eyes, nodded. What are you thinking, Ray? I'm thinking we need proof. Ray took a sip of his coffee. The fire inspector said it was faulty wiring, but the landlord's trying to claim it was something Megan did. That's garbage, Hawk said, his lean face hardening with anger. You saw that place going up. That was electrical, clear as day. Bones, the quietest of the group but the one with the sharpest mind, leaned forward. We need to talk to the other tenants. If the wiring was bad in their place, chances are it's bad in the other properties he owns, too. Good thinking, Ray nodded. We split up, canvass the area, find other renters, see if anyone else had problems they reported that got ignored. Tank, massive and intimidating but gentle-natured, spoke up. I got a buddy who works construction. He could look at the wiring in those other places. Tell us if it's up to code. Perfect, Ray said. And we need to find out if there were previous complaints, building inspection records, that sort of thing. The waitress refilled their cups, eyeing them cautiously. When she walked away, Diesel leaned in. "Those records are public, but we might run into some resistance. People see guys like us asking questions. They get nervous." Ray thought for a moment, then pulled out his phone and showed them a photo. It was a partially burned picture he'd found in the rubble. Lily on her first day of school, smiling with a missing front tooth. "This is what we're fighting for," he said simply. "So we'll find a way." The men nodded, determination settling over them like a mantle. "I know someone at the county clerk's office," Bones offered. "She might help us get those records without too much fuss." "Good," Ray said. "Hawk, you and Tank talk to the neighbors. Diesel, see if you can find other properties this guy owns. I'll go with Bones to check records." "What about the sheriff?" Diesel asked. "He's been watching us since we got here." Ray considered this. "We play it straight. No intimidation, no threats. We're just gathering information. Let the facts speak for themselves." They finished their coffee and headed out, each with their assignment. Ray and Bones drove to the county administration building in Ray's old pickup, rather than their bikes. Less intimidating that way. At the clerk's office, Bones's contact, a middle-aged woman named Martha, greeted them with surprise but not hostility. "Building inspection records?" she repeated, after Bones explained what they needed. "May I ask why?" Ray stepped forward. "The little girl we pulled from that fire? The landlord's trying to blame her mom for what happened. We know it was bad wiring. We just need proof." Martha's expression softened. "I heard about what you boys did. My nephew lives down the street from that place." She lowered her voice. "Between us, that landlord has had complaints before. Give me a few minutes." While they waited, Sheriff Wilkes walked in, stopping short when he saw them. "Gentlemen," he said carefully, "something I can help you with?" Ray stood up straight. "We're gathering information on the Harper fire, public records." The sheriff studied them. "I heard what happened at the motel yesterday, about child services." Ray tensed. "We're not looking for trouble, Sheriff." "Didn't say you were." Wilkes took off his hat. "That landlord Peterson has been cutting corners for years. Nothing serious enough to prosecute, but—" He frowned. "What are you hoping to find here?" "A pattern," Bones answered. "Evidence that he knew about the wiring problems and ignored them." Martha returned with a stack of folders. "Here are the inspection reports for Peterson's properties from the last 5 years. And these—" She handed them another, thinner folder. "Are the complaints filed against him." Sheriff Wilkes glanced at the folders, then back at Ray. "You planning to do something illegal with this information?" "No, sir." Ray met his gaze steadily. "Just looking for the truth." After a long moment, Wilkes nodded. "When you're done here, I'd like to see what you find. Might be I could help move things along through official channels." Ray blinked in surprise. "You'd do that?" "I saw that little girl's face when they were talking about taking her away from her mother," the sheriff said quietly. "Some things just ain't right." He put his hat back on and headed toward the door, then paused. "I'll be in my office this afternoon if you want to stop by." As the door closed behind him, Ray and Bones exchanged looks of surprise. "Did we just get the sheriff on our side?" Bones asked. Ray turned to the folders in front of them. "Let's make sure we've got something worth showing him." By mid-morning the next day, Ray sat at a small table in the back of the local coffee shop, surrounded by stacks of papers. His eyes burned from reading inspection reports and complaint forms for hours. He rubbed the bridge of his nose and looked up as the bell over the door jingled. Diesel walked in, followed by an older woman Ray didn't recognize. She wore a floral dress and carried a worn leather purse clutched tight against her side. Her silver hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and despite her frail appearance, her eyes were sharp and determined. "Ray, this is Mrs. Finley," Diesel said as they approached the table. "She used to rent from Peterson, too." Ray stood and offered his hand. "Ma'am." "I heard what happened to that poor woman and her little girl," Mrs. Finley said, her voice quavering slightly with age but firm with conviction. "It's about time someone stood up to that man." Ray pulled out a chair for her. "We appreciate you coming forward." "Boys," Finley settled into the chair and opened her purse, pulling out a small stack of papers. "I kept every letter I sent him about the electrical problems in my apartment. 3 years I lived there, and 3 years I complained about the lights flickering and the outlets sparking. He never did a thing." Ray looked through the letters, each one dated and detailed, describing dangerous electrical issues. "May I keep these?" "That's why I brought them," she said. "I moved out last year after my son convinced me it wasn't safe. I just wish I'd done something sooner. Maybe that little girl's home would still be standing." The coffee shop door opened again. This time it was Tank, accompanied by a middle-aged man in work clothes. "This is Joe," Tank said. "He's the electrician I told you about. He did some work for Peterson a few years back." Joe nodded at Ray. "Only job I ever walked away from. Told him the whole building needed to be rewired. He said just patch it up enough to pass inspection. I refused, and he never paid me for the assessment." "You willing to put that in writing?" Ray asked. "Already did." Joe handed over a signed statement. "I've got my reputation to protect, but some things matter more than business. That little girl could have died." Throughout the day, more people came forward. A former maintenance worker who'd been fired for making too much noise about safety issues. A tenant who'd moved out after a small electrical fire in her kitchen that Peterson had dismissed as user error. Each person brought another piece to the puzzle, another link in the chain of evidence, showing a clear pattern of negligence. By late afternoon, Ray and his brothers gathered at the sheriff's office. They spread the evidence across Wilkes's desk, inspection reports showing the bare minimum of repairs, complaint letters, photographs, and witness statements. "I've never seen anything like this," Sheriff Wilkes said, shaking his head as he reviewed the materials. "This is more than just cutting corners. This is willful negligence." "The question is, what can we do about it?" Ray asked. Before Wilkes could answer, the door opened and Megan stepped in. Behind her were 3 more people, all former tenants, all with stories to tell. "I heard what you were doing," Megan said to Ray. "Word spreading around town." A young woman beside Megan stepped forward. "I lived in one of his apartments last year. Had a small fire start in my bathroom. When I told Mr. Peterson, he said I must have left my curling iron on, but I don't even own one." Sheriff Wilkes looked at the growing crowd. "Looks like we might need a bigger room." They moved to the community room at the town hall. By evening, nearly 20 people had gathered. Former tenants, neighbors, even the former building inspector who admitted he'd been pressured to overlook certain violations. Ray stood back, watching as Sheriff Wilkes documented each statement. Megan moved to stand beside him. "I never thought anyone would believe me," she said quietly. "When the fire investigator first mentioned faulty wiring, Peterson immediately said I must have overloaded the circuits or done something wrong." "Nobody's buying his story now," Ray said. "Not with all this evidence." From across the room, Sheriff Wilkes caught Ray's eye and gave a small nod. The message was clear. They had enough. The landlord's negligence had become undeniable, and the case against him was growing stronger by the hour. 3 days after the community gathering, Ray sat beside Megan in the cramped office of attorney Martha Brennan. The small law office smelled like old books and coffee. Sunlight streamed through Venetian blinds, casting striped shadows across the dark wooden desk. "So," Martha said, adjusting her reading glasses, "here's where we stand." She tapped a thick folder with her pen. "The evidence you've gathered is substantial, very substantial." Megan gripped the armrests of her chair. Her knuckles turned white. Ray noticed and gave her a reassuring nod. "Mr. Peterson's attorney called me this morning," Martha continued. "They want to discuss settlement terms." "Settlement?" Megan's voice wavered. "Does that mean they're admitting fault?" Martha smiled. "It means they see the writing on the wall. 23 formal complaints about electrical issues. 5 documented instances where Peterson ignored safety warnings. The building inspector's testimony about being pressured to overlook violations." She leaned forward. "And most damning of all, the electrician's report from 2 years ago that specifically identified the exact wiring issue that caused your fire." "So what happens now?" Ray asked. "Now we negotiate." Martha's tone was confident. "They're offering compensation for property damages, temporary housing costs, and some additional funds for your inconvenience." "That's it?" Ray's voice rumbled with frustration. "After everything Megan and Lily have been through?" Martha held up her hand. "That was their initial offer. I countered with our terms, including full property value compensation, all living expenses covered for 6 months, emotional distress damages, and a binding agreement that Peterson will have all his other properties professionally inspected and brought up to code." Megan's eyes widened. "Can we really ask for all that?" "We're not just asking." Martha removed her glasses. "Sheriff Wilkes contacted the county prosecutor. There's talk of criminal negligence charges. Peterson knows that if this goes to court, he's facing more than financial penalties." A soft knock interrupted them. Martha's assistant poked her head in. "The call you were expecting just came through. Line 2. Martha picked up the phone. "This is Martha Brennan." She listened, her expression giving nothing away. Occasionally, she jotted notes on a yellow legal pad. "I see. Yes, that's closer to what we discussed. However—" More silence, more notes. "My client needs assurance this won't happen to another family. The inspection requirement is non-negotiable." Megan stared at Ray, her eyes filled with nervous hope. Ray gave her hand a gentle squeeze. After what seemed like forever, Martha nodded. "That's acceptable. Send over the paperwork this afternoon, and we'll review it." She hung up the phone and looked at Megan with a smile. "They've accepted our terms. All of them." "All of them?" Megan whispered. "Full property value plus 20%. All living expenses for 6 months. A significant amount for emotional distress. And Peterson has agreed to have all his properties inspected within 30 days, with repairs to be completed within 90 days. Martha leaned back in her chair. The county prosecutor's office was very persuasive about the alternative. Tears welled in Megan's eyes. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll start looking for a new home," Martha suggested gently. "The funds should be available within 2 weeks." Outside the law office, Megan stood frozen on the sidewalk, blinking in the bright sunlight. "I can't believe it," she said. "We can start over. A real home for Lily." Ray shifted his weight from one foot to the other. "The boys and I know a good contractor. Honest guy. When you're ready to look at places, he could check it out for you. Make sure everything's up to code." Megan nodded, tears still shimmering in her eyes. "This morning, I was worried about how to pay next week's motel bill. Now—" She took a deep breath. "Now we have a future again." For the first time since the fire, Ray saw real hope in her face. Not just determination to survive, but actual hope for something better. "You always had a future," Ray said quietly. "Now you just have the means to build it." 3 weeks after the settlement, Ray and the Brotherhood stood in the driveway of a modest 2-bedroom house on the edge of town. The morning sun gleamed off their motorcycles parked in a neat row along the curb. The house needed work: peeling paint on the porch, overgrown yard, and a sagging gutter. But it had good bones and a solid foundation. "This is the one," Ray said, running his hand along the weathered railing. "Inspector said the structure is sound. Just need some TLC. Donnie, the tallest of the bikers with a full gray beard, nodded. Price was right, too. It's close to the school, has a backyard for her to play in. Signed the papers yesterday. Then let's get to work, said Grizzly, the heaviest of the group, already rolling up his sleeves. The transformation began that very day. The Brotherhood worked with quiet efficiency, each man finding his role. Grizzly and Mike tackled the yard, cutting back overgrown bushes and mowing the knee-high grass. Donnie fixed the sagging gutters and inspected the roof. Bear, whose real name no one ever used, started scraping old paint from the porch. Ray coordinated it all, checking in with the contractor about the electrical work and plumbing. Word spread quickly through the small town. By afternoon, 3 pickup trucks arrived with volunteers from the community. An elderly man brought sandwiches and cold drinks. A young couple showed up with paint and brushes. Sheriff Wilkes arrived after his shift, toolbox in hand. "My wife thought you might need some curtains," he said, handing Ray a box. "She sews." Ray nodded, surprised. "Tell her thanks." As the sun began to set, the front yard had been transformed, and the porch gleamed with fresh paint. Inside, the kitchen cabinets had been cleaned and repaired. The living room walls, once dingy yellow, now glowed with warm cream paint. Over the next 5 days, the work continued. Community members came and went, bringing supplies, food, and helping hands. Children planted flowers along the walkway. A retired electrician helped rewire the outdated kitchen. 2 women from the church brought homemade quilts for the bedrooms. The Brotherhood remained the constant presence, arriving first thing each morning and leaving last in the evening. They worked with surprising precision. Men who lived rough lives but knew how to build, fix, and create. On the 6th day, furniture began to arrive. Some was purchased new with settlement money, but much was donated. A dining table refinished by a local carpenter, a sofa from the sheriff's mother-in-law who was downsizing, bookshelves built by the high school woodshop class. Ray took special care with Lily's room. He installed a window seat where she could read, painted the walls her favorite shade of sky blue, and hung fairy lights around her bed. Bear, who rarely spoke, carved a wooden sign for her door that read, "Lily's Place." By the end of the week, the transformation was complete. The little house that had been neglected for years now stood proud. Fresh paint, clean windows, flower beds bursting with color. Inside, every room was ready, from the kitchen with its new countertops to the bathroom with its repaired shower. On a sunny Saturday morning, the Brotherhood stood on the porch with a small crowd from town. Ray checked his watch nervously. "They're coming," Sheriff Wilkes called, spotting his deputy's car turning the corner. The car pulled into the driveway. Megan stepped out, her hand covering her mouth in shock as she took in the transformed house. Lily bounced beside her, eyes wide with excitement. "Is this really ours?" Lily whispered, looking from her mother to Ray. "It really is," Ray said, coming down the steps to meet them. "Want to see inside?" Lily took his hand immediately, and after a moment's hesitation, Megan took his other hand. Together, they walked up the porch steps. "Welcome home," Ray said simply as he opened the door. Inside, Lily gasped at the sight of her new home. The living room glowed with soft lamplight, simple furniture arranged to create a cozy space. Photos rescued from the fire had been carefully framed and hung on one wall. "Look, Mom, our pictures!" Lily pulled her mother toward the display. Megan brushed her fingers over the frames, tears streaming down her face. "I thought we'd lost these forever." Ray stood back, watching their reactions. The other bikers filed in behind them, trying to look casual, but clearly proud of what they'd accomplished. As Lily explored each room, her excitement grew. She squealed with delight at her bedroom, jumping onto the new bed and hugging the teddy bear someone had left on the pillow. When she discovered the window seat, she immediately climbed in, pressing her face to the glass. "I can see the whole yard from here," she announced. More townspeople arrived, carrying dishes of food and small gifts. The modest house soon filled with voices and laughter. Someone brought a portable speaker, and music played softly in the background. In the kitchen, the counters filled with casseroles, salads, and a cake decorated with the words, "Welcome home." Ray stood in a corner, watching it all. He wasn't used to this kind of gathering, warm, friendly, full of normal people. His leather vest and tattoos stood out among the townspeople in their casual clothes, but no one seemed to mind anymore. Sheriff Wilkes approached with 2 bottles of beer, handing one to Ray. "You did good," he said quietly. "We all did," Ray replied, nodding toward the room full of people. "Never would have happened without you boys," the sheriff said. "Funny how things work out." As the afternoon wore on, people mingled and ate. Lily moved from room to room, showing off her new home to anyone who would follow. Megan spoke with neighbors, looking more relaxed than Ray had ever seen her. The sunlight began to shift, casting golden light through the windows. The crowd thinned as people headed home for dinner or evening plans. Soon, only Megan, Lily, the Brotherhood, and a few close neighbors remained. They gathered in the living room, plates balanced on their laps. Lily sat cross-legged on the floor near Ray's feet, eating a second slice of cake. She looked up at him, her face serious. "Ray." "Yeah, kiddo?" "Thank you for saving me from the fire." The room grew quiet. Ray shifted uncomfortably. "Anyone would have done that." Lily shook her head firmly. "Not anyone. You did it. And then you stayed. You didn't leave even when things got hard." Ray swallowed hard, unsure what to say. Lily stood up and wrapped her arms around him, her head resting against his chest. "You kept your promise," she whispered. Ray's large hand gently patted her back. "Always will, Lily." Megan wiped tears from her eyes. "I don't know how we can ever thank all of you enough." Donnie spoke up from his spot near the window. "No thanks needed, ma'am. That's what family does." The word hung in the air. Family. Something none of them had truly felt in a long time. As the sun began to set, Ray and the Brotherhood prepared to leave. They had a long ride ahead to their clubhouse in the next county. On the front porch, Megan hugged each of them, whispering thank yous and making them promise to visit soon. Ray knelt down to Lily's level. "You take care of your mom, okay?" "I will." She fidgeted with her hands. "Will you come back to see us?" "Count on it," Ray said, his voice gruff with emotion. The bikers mounted their motorcycles, engines rumbling to life in the quiet neighborhood. Ray was last to go. He put on his helmet and looked back at the porch where Lily stood waving, her smile bright in the golden sunset light. She was safe now. She had a home. Ray lifted his hand in farewell, then turned to follow his brothers down the road. For the first time in years, the weight on his shoulders felt lighter. The open road ahead didn't feel like an escape anymore. It felt like a path that would always lead back to where he belonged. I hope you like this story. Please share what's your favorite part of the story and where in the world you are watching from. Have a wonderful day.